Even 12,000 years ago, cave paintings in Spain depicted a pose that's instantly recognizable today. Draw, aim, shoot. After all, it was the archer who first sighted and shot the bullseye countless ages ago. Today, it's the longbow archery of Byron Ferguson that sets the benchmark of precision for contemporary bow shooters. Ferguson has spent the last 28 years practicing and polishing his skills with his own handcrafted bows to attain preeminent status as the world's top-flight exhibition archer.
I began shooting the bow when I was 12 years old. I really don't know what prompted me to get into it, other than just like all kids, you know, everybody's always had a bow and arrow in their hands at one time or another. And I guess I just liked it more than most kids because I've stayed with it.
Ferguson has also stayed with the traditional longbow, revered in legend and lore. Although different bow designs may offer more power, that power can at times be a handicap.
The recurve bow and the compound bow, while they may cast an arrow faster, they're less forgiving, meaning they are harder to shoot than the traditional longbow. With the longbow, you can get away with quite a bit of mistake and still the arrow will hit the mark. An airline pilot, I think, referred to it best when he told me that the longbow is to archery what soaring is to flying.
Don't think that means the longbow is limited to simple shooting challenges, however, at least not with Ferguson's hand on the bowstring. You have to admit, though, he does make it look easy, and he attributes this to his philosophy of trying to become the arrow.
In archery, you can't hit the target by trying not to miss it. When you actually become the arrow, you will see that arrow hit dead center of the target before you ever draw the bow.
Ferguson's hunting background is obvious in the shots he uses for practice. What he calls his under-the-limb and backbreaker shots are ideal for shooting big game in the deep woods near his North Alabama home. But for sheer showmanship, Ferguson has some specialty shots tucked away in his quiver that put accuracy and timing to the ultimate test, especially when you consider his habit of killing time blindfolded just 40 paces from his wife and assistant Wanda, who understandably can't resist a flinch every now and then. Although internationally acclaimed, Ferguson maintains he has yet to match the exploits of the man he calls his mentor, the greatest archer this side of Robin Hood and William Tell, the late Howard Hill.
And the more I studied his life, the more impressed I was with the man, and still am. I feel like that Howard Hill, by far, is the greatest archer that's ever lived. Howard Hill once shot 10 dimes in a row out of the air. The best I've ever done was 8 pennies in a row. So, I mean, I'm still too short.
Well, that's Ferguson's 2 cents worth anyway. For anybody else, his skill with the longbow is nothing short of priceless.
Welcome to Volume 1 of Byron Ferguson's Most Amazing Shots. If you're an aficionado of archery, or of any display of superior marksmanship for that matter, then you're probably already aware of Byron's reputation as a first-rate showman at hundreds of live shows throughout the United States, Europe, and Asia. Moreover, his regular appearances on the award-winning American Shooter program that airs as a part of the ESPN Outdoors weekly cable television series has introduced an entirely new audience to Byron's near-magical talents with the longbow. In fact, far from revealing certain tricks that might diminish Byron's real accomplishment with a bow and arrow, television actually enhances the sense of wonder at his ability to make excruciatingly difficult shots with a projectile so wayward that it literally corkscrews through the air. But in a lifetime devoted to the practice of archery, as a showman, big game hunter, and craftsman of his own line of handmade longbows, Byron has developed such an intimacy with the tools of his trade that he quite convincingly credits his skill to an ability to feel how his arrows fly through the air. In his handbook on archery, which is titled Become the Arrow, Byron espouses the technique of pre-visualizing an arrow's trajectory from bowstring to target as a means of improving accuracy. In the following 3 amazing aerial shots, it is possible to see just how an arrow's erratic trajectory can be harnessed to the will of the shooter in order to meet the greatest challenge of classical archery, hitting a target on the fly. When you see exhibition archer Byron Ferguson launch an arrow off a ramp into his target, you can bet he's got several more clever shots tucked away in his quiver. This time, the sky's the limit as Ferguson demonstrates his skill at aerial archery with a display of marksmanship he calls his longbow wing shots. Inspired by the late and legendary Howard Hill, who dominated exhibition archery from the 30s through the 50s, Ferguson tackles some classic bird hunting shots, but with his longbow instead of a shotgun.
You know, it's said that Mr. Howard Hill shot over 3,000 duck on the wing in his career. What I'm going to try to do for you now is to shoot some wood ducks.
If hitting an aerial target with a longbow looks hard, it is, but it's even harder than it looks, since an arrow actually requires several feet to achieve a straight trajectory once it leaves the bow.
And that's duck shooting. Wood duck shooting, longbow style.
One way to make the challenge harder is to make the target smaller. Here's what it looks like when a bow and arrow guy decides to take up sporting clays.
And sporting clays is the rage these days, so for this week's shot of the week, I'm going to try to shoot some clay pigeons for you with my bow.
Not only does the longbow have a much narrower shot pattern than a shotgun, but there's also the matter of velocity, with the typical 12 gauge delivering shot speed over 6 times that of an arrow.
Well, I shoot a 70-pound bow in exhibition, and we're still developing between 190 and 200 feet per second on arrow speed, which is pretty amazing considering that when the compound bows first came out, they would only shoot 160 feet a second.
But for the ultimate aerial archery challenge, it's Ferguson himself who gets up to speed.
What we're going to try to do for you now, folks, is knock a cardboard disc out of the air from a moving vehicle. Let's go for it.
Just consider all the variables involved in this shot: speed and trajectory of the target, of the arrow, and of the shooter, not to mention the bumpy ride. But if it still looks too easy, there are ways to make this shot harder yet.
We're going to shoot at a smaller wooden disc. Same shot, but smaller target. Okay? Well, that's what you call pass-by wing shooting on wood ducks.
And that's what we call some pretty impressive bow shooting by a championship archer who's really going places, Byron Ferguson. When exhibition archer Byron Ferguson gets fed up with what's showing on TV, he doesn't shoot his mouth off about it. Instead, he draws on his expertise as a longbowman and serves up some marksmanship that's guaranteed to set most viewers aquiver. Here's his interpretation of quality airtime.
We're going to start off by taking a few shots at some warm-up discs. But before we do that, I want to caution everybody that, you know, we're professionals. We've been doing this for a long time, and kids, please don't try to do this at home.
We have a lot of fun doing this, and I do wear safety glasses, and I am Byron's 12th wife.
It may not be a falling away jumper, but when Air Ferguson takes a shot, he definitely has a way of making his point.
What I'm going to try to do for you today is again hold the bow with my feet, but this time shoot a disc out of the air. A little bit different deal here, so let's see what happens. First, you got to get the bow set just right on the foot where the pressure will be correct. Okay.
Even setting up a shot like this one means doing everything in a thoroughly unfamiliar way. And aiming is definitely by the seat of the pants. Byron's learned that he really has to toe the line with this shot.
Everybody always wants to know the same things. How do you do that? Well, what I try to do is become the arrow. Once you do that, it's next to impossible to miss, unless you're shooting a small target like a quarter. See what we can do. What I try to do is take archery a step further than just practicing until I feel like the bow is an extension of me. I try to practice until I feel like the arrow is an extension, or become the arrow.
Part of becoming the arrow means becoming extremely flexible with your shooting style. As this slow motion footage reveals, what's known as the archer's paradox causes an arrow to career so wildly through the air, it's a wonder Byron can strike a coin even a quarter of the time. But with 1 hit out of 3, he's managed to improve his profits right on target.
Got a pretty good hit on it. Bent her up pretty bad. But you know, this can get to be expensive, shooting at quarters. So I'm gonna be working on something a little less expensive and probably even a little bit more challenging shot. See what I can come up with on that. You know, last time you saw me shooting at wooden discs. And then of course we went to a quarter. But what we're going to do for you now, or I should say what we're going to attempt to do, is to shoot an aspirin. They're a lot cheaper than quarters, you know.
Well, an aspirin may be a cheaper target, but with a diameter of about 3/8 of an inch, it's scarcely larger than the arrow shaft itself, and that makes it a much tougher target. In fact, shooting at an airborne aspirin is a real pain, because you also have to take into account the arrow's natural instability as it first leaves the bow. The archer's paradox, as it's called.
A lot of you have written in asking what is archer's paradox. Archer's paradox refers to the arrow actually warping around the riser and then straightening up in flight. If you're looking at the arrow, it would look something like this. When fired, the energy applied to the back of the arrow causes it to warp around the shaft, then the arrow will eventually right itself. Archer's paradox creates a real headache when you're trying to shoot a target about the same size as the point.
Even with Byron Ferguson's pull, it sometimes takes more than a couple of aspirin before there's any relief. And since the target's so small, it's not always clear when it has been hit, even though Byron and Bart Volpin-Testa, American Shooter's cameraman, have both given it their best shot at exactly the same time.
That was a hit, Bart.
I'm not going to contest it.
Eventually, a shooter of Byron's caliber will home in on his target, and then it's time for some serious pill popping. But although a strike's a strike no matter how it happens, nothing hits the spot like a shot that strikes dead center.
Well, I'll tell you, we've nicked some of them, we've fletched some of them, a few we've totally missed, but you know what? I'm a powder man myself, and I'm not going to quit shooting this thing till I smoke one of them.
So much for taking the easy way out and just calling it quits after a couple of hits. But when you know you've got it in you, you've just got to keep on trying until it comes out exactly right. You definitely got it made when you can take satisfaction in seeing all your hard work go up in smoke. It just goes to show you that in archery, at least, when you want to come on strong, it's time to take a powder. Watching Byron work his way through a collection of tossed-up targets ranging from wooden discs to quarters to aspirins ought to dispel any doubts about his ability to pull a trick shot out of thin air. For thousands of years in legend and lore, skill at archery has stood for one of the highest forms of personal achievement at arms. The accomplished archer, after all, is able to control events at long distances from himself by resorting to only the simplest of tools: a length of wood, a strand of string, a pointed shaft, and feathers for fletching. Adaptations of the classic William Tell shot and using an arrow's fletches to snuff out a candle let Byron recreate a sense of bygone days. And by taking a page from the rifle and handgun sharpshooters of the Wild West, he confirms that the archery he practices is still relevant and exciting in this gunpowder age.
Of course, this is the classic William tail shot. And, you know, I've been doing this for a lot of years, but that's the only dummy that let me try to do this. Let's see what happens. For you kids at home now, you don't want to try this. If you really think you want to try this, before your volunteer puts the apple on their head, you should see the outtake of this shot.
Missing your target on national TV has a way of keeping your talents from going to your head.
That's why that's the only dummy that will let me try that.
But Byron's a professional, and there's no way a little headache is going to keep him from giving us his best shot.
That's making applesauce the hard way, I guess is what you could say. Hope it didn't mess up my cap. That was a brand new cap on that thing. We're gonna have a little variation now to the William tail shot. We've got a couple of poker chips here, and we've got a piece of tape on one where it will hold the other one up. And what we're gonna do is set those right up on the bill of the cap. Step off about 15 paces. Try to knock it over. See what happens.
When Byron's behind the bow and the chips are down, all bets are off. It doesn't matter how small the target is, it's how you look at it that counts.
When you're shooting any target, one of the most important things you can do is to pick a very small spot to aim at. That spot should be in the center of the target. I actually try to visualize the target being hit. In the case of the poker chip, I try to visualize the arrow impacting on the poker chip and, you know, pieces flying off of it in order to psych myself up. Well, it is smaller than an apple. Now, I know a lot of you guys out there saying, so he hit an apple, and well, maybe the poker chip was a little bit harder shot than the apple, but I'm gonna promise you this next one is smoking.
You don't have to be a dummy to enjoy a good puff every now and then, but you probably are if Byron's in the vicinity.
Looks like that got the ashes.
Granted, there may be gentler ways to put an end to 2 packs a day, but only Byron's got the surefire cure that's right on target.
Ooh, gonna burn the haystack down. Oh, I tell you what, that ought to break you from the habit. What we're gonna do next is one of the most requested shots we've had on American Shooter. This one is Snuffing the Candle. A lot of people seem to think this is not a very difficult shot. All you have to do is just get close. But you know, in reality, you actually have to hit the flame, if not the wick, in order to snuff the candle out. So what we're gonna try to do for you now is to put the flame of the candle out without damaging the wax on the candle.
If you watch Byron Ferguson's shot closely enough, it's easy to appreciate this special challenge for an archer.
Yep, we got the flame, no damage to the wax.
The shaft of the arrow is obviously much smaller than the flame, but the area swept by the turkey feather fletching is a good bit larger. Byron's success depends solely on the accuracy with which he places his arrowhead through the tip of the flame so that the fletching will actually blow out the fire as it corkscrews just over the molten wax.
That's always a fun shot for me to do, and it's, you know, it's a popular shot when we do it in live exhibitions. Howard Hill did it in the Adventures of Robin Hood with Earl Flynn, and if properly set up, it's a fun shot for you to do at home. Unlike what we normally tell you, don't try this. This is something you ought to try. Just be sure of your backstop, the background behind your target, and that you don't set anything on fire. I think you folks at home are going to enjoy this one. What we got here is a playing card, 6/1000 of an inch thick. The average human hair is 2/1000 of an inch, to give you an idea. People have been shooting these things for years with rifles and pistols. I'm going to try to do it with my bow and arrow. I can't even see the card. can't make any promises on this one. I tell you what, we're gonna give it a whirl here and see what happens. Keep your fingers crossed.
Well, a little luck never hurt anybody, but when it comes to super accurate archery, Byron's ability to hit what he's aiming for is more or less in the cards.
When you're shooting any target, one of the most important things you can do is to pick a very small spot to aim at. Although you might not hit that exact spot, still you should hit reasonably close to it. That'll work. I actually try to visualize the target being hit. I've shot a lot of arrows, so it's kind of like a computer flipping through the program and finding the exact right program for that particular circumstance. I'm visualizing the shot, and while I'm doing that, the onboard computer is flipping through all the various shots that I've ever done and picking out what the sight picture should look like.
And time after amazing time, what that sight picture looks like, if you happen to be Byron Ferguson, is a bullseye. Just imagine placing a shot so carefully that a misjudgment of only 7/1000ths of an inch will put you over the edge.
Well, I see you folks had your fingers crossed. I've practiced a lot of years and lost a lot of arrows trying to learn to do that, but you know what, folks? It's better to be lucky than good any day. The first shot we're going to do for you this week is one that I have borrowed from a very famous lady that used to do this in the Wild West shows, Miss Annie Oakley. Well, now Annie was using the firearms to do this, and I'm going to try to do it with a bow and arrow. I think maybe Howard Hill might have done this back in his day. I'm not real sure about that. But anyways, one thing that I am sure of, I'm the only one crazy enough around to do it today. All right, let's try this one. Of course, one of the most important aspects of this shot is to have someone steady enough to hold the mirror without moving it and wait for the wind not to blow quite so hard. The balloon will be a little bit more stationary, and then you can do the shot like that. We're going to do another one for you now, another Annie Oakley shot. This time we've got a small balloon inside a larger balloon. We're going to try to burst the larger balloon without damaging the small one, and then get the small one. All right, now we're going to try for the blue one. Okay. Let's get everything right, because that's not much of a target there now. All right, the double balloon shot.
Because Ferguson concentrates on becoming the arrow rather than on isolating the target, he says he's not distracted by a mirror image that shows everything in reverse.
When you actually become the arrow, you will see that arrow hit dead center of the target before you ever draw the bow. In archery, you can't hit the target by trying not to miss it.
But can you hit a target that you're trying hard to see? With his world-famous ring shot, Ferguson proves he's willing to jump through hoops to make an incredible shot.
Obviously, what I'm going to try to do is shoot through the diamond ring without damaging it. See how it goes. The ring shot came about from a TV show I did a few years ago called Super People of the World that was filmed in Tokyo. After having practiced for 3 days solid on that one shot, we actually performed the shot live for 42 million people on Japanese TV.
Talk about a ringing endorsement of Ferguson's shooting ability. Making this shot means putting an arrow through a circle less than 5/8 of an inch in diameter.
And the ring is still intact.
As Entertaining as it is to bring some of the classic feats of marksmanship up to date, it is with contemporary shots of Byron's own design, like the spectacular ring shot, that his unique mastery of longbow archery finally takes center stage. Consider, for example, that when an arrow first leaves Byron's longbow, it fishtails violently over a span of as much as 12 inches side to side. When in shots like you're about to see, the challenge of precise timing is added to that of pinpoint accuracy, it's a wonder that a swerving, bucking, and diving arrow can hit anything at all. And when Byron rigs up a contraption that he calls his double-barrel longbow, he multiplies the challenge so preposterously that you literally have to see it in televised slow motion if you're gonna believe it.
The shot that refreshes. This is probably one of the most unusual shots you'll ever see. We're going to try to do this one for you from about 45 feet back. This is the first time I've ever attempted to do this, so you folks at home are seeing the first. Hopefully the first.
The tricky part of this shot is the setup. The way the cup and bottle are aligned, it's awful hard for Byron to see what he's shooting at. But for those of us who are old enough to remember a world before self-opening soda cans, this old-timey bottle opener is the key to everything.
We were shooting at the top of the opener. If we hit the opener too low, then you stand a chance of not only not opening coat fully, but breaking the neck of the coat. So you got to hit right up on the top of the opener where it will cam over, which gives it a difficulty level up there, about 9 or 10, really, compared to the other shots that we've been doing. Simply because there's not a very big place to hit on top of that opener.
Now there's a shot that's hard to top if ever there were one. But remember, Byron has years of experience to draw on, not to mention a very special longbow that he has designed and handcrafted in his own Alabama workshop.
Today I'm using a Royal Safari model, pulling 70 pounds at 28 inches of draw. The Royal Safari is a 4-lamination bow. It's 4 laminations in the limb itself, plus a 5th lamination of biased glass, which runs through the core of the bow. And that biased glass gives this bow extreme lateral stability. What that does is allow me to manufacture a bow that I get great speed out of while remaining stable.
Being handmade one at a time, Byron's longbows each acquire their own distinct shooting characteristics, which is all part of the fun of traditional archery.
One of the features of having a bow custom made is like having a yacht or an airplane, in that you actually name the bow, and it gives it a little bit more personality. Like this bow is called Sure Thing, notice T-H-A-N-G, thing.
But in the hands of master bowman Byron Ferguson, you could call it anything, and the results would be the same surefire accuracy that puts Byron well over the top among an exceedingly small group of world-class exhibition archers.
Drinks are on me. Well, we're going to do another shot that's a little bit different. What we're going to do is put a target, this time it's going to be a balloon, on the hay bale, and swing the tire back and forth in front. And what I'm going to try to do is from about 25 yards is to shoot an arrow through the tire and burst the balloon. So that's what we're going to start with, and we'll work our way up from there. Should be a relatively simple shot, as long as I get the timing right. That was too easy. Let's do something that's more fun to look at and more fun for me to do. Well, that first one might have been easy, but I guarantee you this one won't be. What we're going to do now is to swing the tire back and forth, have a balloon on the bale of hay, and I'm going to try to bounce an arrow off the ramp, through the tire while it's swinging, and burst the balloon. This one will be fun. Oh, that looks awful small from 30 yards. All right, here we go. Wow! That is. That was fun. We've already done this shot straight up. We've bounced it off a ramp for a little different slant. But now it's time to do some real shooting. What we're going to try to do for you now is to burst this balloon in the tire, the balloon on the hay, but the difference is this will be spinning. So we've got to time the shot to where the arrow will pass through this balloon and then on to the second one. This should be a lot of fun. Uh-oh, there was something missing on that shot. Holy mackerel, did y'all see that? It can actually be done. I saw it, it happened. All right. That's all, folks.
When we watched Byron perform his aerial shots, he was flying high after hitting a quiver full of increasingly smaller targets. For his shot this time, he's determined to try twice as hard to impress with only 1/2 the effort. See for yourself.
You know, when you look at this bow, the first thing you're going to notice is I've done some additional customizing. I've got an arrow rest glued to the riser here and a set of knocking points, or extra set of knocking points on the string. And now I'm going to show you why.
Basically, it's a case of Byron trying to pass his longbow off as an over-under shotgun. And if you think it can't be done, just keep your eyes peeled for the shot that Byron calls his double-barrel bow shot.
Just in case you hadn't already figured it out, this is why I've got the bow customized. 2 targets, 2 arrows, shot at the same time. Now the problem with this shot is shooting 2 arrows. The arrows are grossly overspined because I'm not adding enough energy to both arrows. So what I've got to do is try to compensate for the not the lack of, but too much spine in the arrows. You'll notice these arrows aren't flying very well.
Even though these arrows shoot more stiffly than usual because they're dividing the bowstring's energy between them, they're obviously flying well enough to stiff arm a couple of sporting clays that are hanging out side by side.
Hey, everybody gets lucky every once in a while. Well, you know, that was a little fun shot. That was pretty good. But you know, I think I know a way to make it a lot more fun for me and a lot more fun for you guys to watch. Let's try it. And what we've got is a couple of clay pigeons like before, but this time they're swinging on wires. And my wife, Wanda, there is going to make them swing back and forth, and I'm going to attempt to hit both clays with 2 arrows shot at the same time.
Leave it to a showman like Byron to go 2-timing a trick shot that's already double the trouble. But like they say, sometimes you just can't do a thing if you ain't got that swing.
Okay, let's go for it.
Imagine that, 2 strikes off 1 pitch. That's too bad, but still worth a second try.
I'm going to aim at the bottom of the left disc. I certainly hope y'all saw that, because I'm not doing it again.
It's definitely worth seeing again, though, because it's not often that a lone archer will hit twin moving targets with 2 arrows shot from 1 pull of the bow.
You saw another first, folks. That's the first time I've done that shot.
Watching Byron ply his craft, it doesn't take very long to reach the conclusion that marksmanship is one thing, but showmanship requires an extra degree of effort and creativity altogether. Among the ring shots, soda pop top shots, tires a-swinging, and double arrows flinging, Byron has perfected a technique for shooting bank shots that allows him literally to shoot around corners. It's archery in 4 dimensions, since timing too is critical once the wind begins to buffet his targets up and down at random intervals. But it's also perhaps the most vivid possible demonstration of pure sharpshooting talent with no tricks, gimmicks, or sleights of hand. In other words, with Byron at the bow, what you see is exactly what you get. In the hands of a champion archer like Byron Ferguson, the classic longbow is capable of sharpshooting feats that seem to defy the laws of physics. If you'll excuse the pun, Ferguson's ability to shoot literally around corners is a case in point.
We're going to set up and do a little fun shot, a little ramp shot. Has absolutely no place in the hunting aspects of archery, but it's a fun little shot to do. What we're going to do is place the ramp. We're going to try to bounce an arrow off the ramp and burst a balloon that we're going to put on the bale of hay. The difficulty level on a scale of 1 to 10, this one is probably a 6. Not that hard to do, but not that easy either. We're approximately 75 feet from the target. I'm going to try to bounce the arrow off the ramp and burst the balloon. Okay, I'm going to start out on the back of the ramp and see where it goes. Actually, that's not all that difficult a shot to do, but kids, don't try to do this at home because you'll have holes in the roof if you do. Of course, in order to do this shot, you've got to have split vision. What I mean by split vision is you've got to be able to see the ramp and the target at the same time, concentrating on both equally. And when you do everything right, it happens.
It's a long day with the longbow if you've got to stand for every shot you make. Sometimes it pays to take a load off and just set a spell.
What we're going to do next, folks, is the lazy man's ramp shot. Same as before, we're going to bounce the arrow off the ramp and burst the balloon, except this time I'm going to do it left-footed rather than right-handed. 1 to 10, this one's an 8. As we go along, the shots will get more and more difficult to do.
As if shooting an 80-pound pull longbow with your feet while sitting down weren't hard enough already. And that doesn't even take into account the fact that Ferguson's ramp is angling his shot about 60 degrees away from where he's aiming.
There's several different reasons why it is more difficult. Not just because I'm holding the bow with my feet, but I have less angle on the ramp since I'm seated and not standing. And also I have considerably less velocity on the arrow because I'm not drawing the bow as far. All those factors combined make it a much more exacting shot in that the arrow has to strike the ramp at exactly the precise place in order to make the shot work. Practice, practice, practice. And again, kids, don't try to do that at home. This is a double wall shot. And again, what we're going to try to do is to ricochet an arrow off of this wall, off of that wall, and burst the balloon. You know what really makes this a fun shot to do is the degree of difficulty. Believe it or not, this is probably one of the hardest shots we've ever done. The reason for that is the angles are so severe that I have to hit these walls exactly right, within just a fraction of an inch to be able to make this shot work. Oh, that's how it works when you finally get it right. It's not, like I said, the difficult part of it is being able to place the arrow precisely on those 2 boards in order to break that balloon. Now, if we really wanted to get hard, we would put 2 or maybe 3 balloons up there and try to get all 2 or 3 of them with one shot. Gee, impossible, impossible. You can't do that. How could the second balloon get out of the way? You got to find the sweet spot on that first board. Well, we've got 1, then we got 2, and now we're going for 3. Now, the problem we got here is not only having to hit the exact right place on the boards and because of the acute angles, we got the wind blowing the targets around. This one's a little tricky. I guess that's the reason they call it trick shooting. Oh, well, sometimes it works. And when it does, man, that's a lot of fun. You know, just punching holes in paper is a lot of fun, but the most fun is when you get moving. Any moving target with a bow and arrow increases the difficulty simply because remember how relatively slowly that arrow travels. You know what your lead would be with a shotgun that's traveling 1,100 or a really hot one around 1,200 feet per second. Arrows travel at 200 feet per second or less. So your lead is way out there, more so than what it would be with a firearm. A little bit too easy, don't you think so? Let's make it twice as hard. The thing about switching from targets and doing it quickly is just being nimble enough to get the arrow out of the quiver, get it on the string, and get the shot off. With that having been said, you're having to switch from a simple windage lead to a lead both in windage and elevation. We started with one moving target, then we went to another moving target. Now we're going to add a third mover, me. It's one thing for the target to be moving, but when both the shooter and the target's moving in opposite directions, it is tough. It is double tough. That's one of those things, I guess you can say, where you revert to instinctive, or if you want to be kind about it, you say you're poking and hoping. You're doing the best you can and trusting your instincts to do the rest. The hard part about getting the second target is getting the arrow on the string, because remember how bumpy it is. I mean, you're having a hard time just keeping your balance to keep from falling out of the truck. But now you've got to draw, knock an arrow, find the target, calculate the lead, get the shot off.
I love it.
See you later. Hey guys, good to see you. People down at Target Movers, this unit we're going to play with this year, we're going to put it through the paces. We're going to do things that this thing was never designed to do. So y'all just take a seat and have fun, because that's what I'm going to do. When you're shooting normally, you'd be pointing the arrow at an appropriate spot in order to hit the target. When sitting down, I'm basically pointing my foot rather than the arrow. I'm just going to point my foot where I expect the target to be. It's instinctive hard. There's no way to aim it. You just have to feel it. That was fun, but not as fun as what we're going to do next. What affects the lead is the speed of the target and the distance to the target. Obviously, the farther the target is from you, the more you'll have to lead it. Average distance, say 20 yards, at a target moving the speed at which we were shooting, I would be leading probably about 3 to 4 feet. From long range, I was leading about 15 to 20 feet. All right, let me see, what else can we do? I'll think of something. The problem with doing the ramp shots is the way you shoot a bow and arrow, you focus on the target. And you keep your eye glued to the target. When shooting the ramp shot at a moving target, you're having to focus on the ramp and see the target out of peripheral vision. So it's backwards to what I would normally shoot. All right, we got one more. The problem with a double arrow shot, the bottom arrow receives more energy from the bow limbs than the top arrow. Therefore, it's traveling faster than the top arrow. The cant of the bow becomes more critical because of the top arrow being farther off center. If you cant the bow
a little bit more, it would have the same effect as giving it more lead. I love it. See you later. You know, hitting the target is not always the hardest part. Sometimes it's just finding somebody to throw for you. Not a problem, just learn how to throw for yourself. If someone else is throwing for you, all you have to be concerned with is the bow. But now you've got to throw the target, get the target in the air, get the fingers on the bowstring, get the bow drawn, take aim, release. A little too easy. Those wood discs are roughly the size of birds of bobwhite quail, pheasants at the outside. So obviously anytime the target is small, it's a problem. When the target is moving, it's a problem. When the target is not only moving, but it's accelerating as it moves, is a big problem. I know you can't get anybody to throw for you on this next one. Well, that's pretty good shooting, don't you think? All right. We'll do it for real one time. Think I'm cheating, don't you? Not this time. Now I can hear the sound, I know where the target is, and I have to just mentally visualize how much lead I got to have. All right. Well, you just seen probably what's the hardest archery shot in the world to make. I wouldn't advise you to try that one in your backyard, especially when the neighbor's watching. You know, hitting a 2.5 by 3.5 playing card is considered pretty good in some circles, but not on American Shooter. We gotta do better than that. When shooting pinpoint accuracy, everything is in the form. If you mess up a little bit on the release or on the follow through, you'll miss the target entirely. The smaller the target, the more important your form is. To the best of my memory, a playing card is 4 thousandths of an inch thick. A human hair is only 2 thousandths of an inch thick. So we're trying to hit a target roughly twice the diameter of a hair. It's hard enough to hit it if you could see it. When you can't see it, now you're having to try to imagine where it's at. So you're aiming at a spot you can't even see. It's like a shot in the dark. You know, we've split playing cards on this show before, but now we're gonna make it twice as hard. We've never done this before. We're gonna try to split 2 playing cards with 1 shot. I'm pointing the arrow using peripheral vision, just pointing the arrow at what I think is an appropriate spot in space beneath the target to be hit. It's a very, very difficult shot just because the target is so small. If you look at it in a different light, when you're trying to shoot 1 playing card in 2, you have the width of the broadhead. So you can actually miss more on 1 than you can when you're trying to hit 2. Because when you're trying to hit 2, you're having to split the width of the broadhead where each ear of the broadhead will hit 1 card. So you can only miss half as much. There you go, 2 playing cards with 1 shot. I had a lot of fun, I hope you did. We'll see you next time. Today we're gonna do something that's just almost impossible. We're going to glance an arrow off the ramp, breaking this balloon. The arrow will travel on to the second overhead ramp, breaking the second balloon, then dip down and break the 3rd balloon that we can't even see. That's what makes this shot so hard, is that you have to strike the first ramp in exactly the right place. You can't just be close to it. It just goes to show you, just because you think a shot is impossible, don't necessarily mean that it's impossible. Well, you've seen us do that before, have somebody throwing far simulating bird shots. You ain't gonna believe what we're gonna do today. We're gonna go, I guess, what you could call high-tech.
Byron's right, and if you want to simulate birds on the wing, you can't get any more realistic than this. And since Byron is pulling the bowstring, he's got to have a pilot.
I'll tell you right now, guys, in order to do this kind of shooting, it helps to have a friend like Sidney Austin.
Sidney's got two things going for him today. He's a two-time national remote control pilot champion, and he's got Byron shooting, which means his plane won't likely take any friendly fire. It would hope.
Well, my major concern is not shooting the tail off of Sidney's plane, because that's exactly what it looks like. It looks like in order to hit the balloon, you're going to have to shoot right at the airplane. That's how much lead you have.
Now that Byron has the lead figured out on that one, Sidney brings the plane up with a new balloon and a new flight plan.
This is going to be fun.
The difficulty here is that the balloon appears to be much closer to the tail of the plane, making the shot a bit unnerving, to say the least. Byron now has to aim in front of the plane in order to hit the target.
That's just like the real thing there.
All right, one more takeoff and one more pass, this time low and fast.
Boy, that lead changes quick.
The problems with a low-flying pass are Byron's having to allow the plane to fly by before he's able to shoot the balloon. And the speed of the plane is deceptive as it approaches, making the lead almost impossible to judge.
It seemed to be almost floating as it was coming in, and then it would get beside me. It's like it just accelerated, like it had rockets or something. It just screamed when it went by me.
Gotcha. What we're going to do today is to try to appease some of the guys that were kidding me at the sports shows this spring about the Oakley shot. Sure, anybody can do that. All you got to do is get lined up. But can anybody hit a disc tossed up in the air while aiming in a mirror? I don't know, but we're going to find out. John Freeland here is the inventor of the Hitchhiker target launcher. And since this is a fairly risky shot, I've enlisted John's aid not only to hold the mirror for me, but also he brought the Hitchhiker down and he's going to be launching the targets for us, where the worst thing's going to happen, maybe he get a hole through the windshield or something like that. As far as I know, there's nobody ever been crazy enough to try this. We've done it with stationary targets, obviously, and Oakley is the one that originated the shot. But now you're going to see a Ferguson original here. We're going to try to shoot a disc out of the air, aiming in the mirror. It will be a successful shot as long as nobody gets hurt too bad. Okay? If the target is stationary and you've practiced, you pretty much know you're going to hit it before you ever draw the bow. But when that target's moving, you're not in control anymore. The target is in control. You're dealing with several different variables. The target is moving at different speeds and also sometimes getting closer to you, sometimes getting farther away from you. So you have to revert more to the instinctive mode of shooting. In order to hit a aerial target using a mirror to aim with, it would be a great benefit to have dyslexia, actually. It's one of those things that you really can't practice for. There's too many variables. The slightest little degree of angle difference in the way the mirror is being held will cause you to shoot wildly to the right or to the left, over or under. It's one of those things that if there's any such thing as pure instinctive shooting, okay, where there's no way under the sun that you can aim an arrow, it would have to be shooting using the mirror. It's just you feel where the target's at and release. Trying to correct from one shot to the next if you're missing is really null and void because of the differences in the angle of the mirror. Because what caused you to shoot over the target on one shot and you correct, and you're going to shoot under the next shot, but then the mirror has also moved slightly. I guess that's why you don't see very many people with mirrors on their bows. Woo! Did y'all see that? I certainly hope you saw that, because if you think I'm doing it again, you're crazier than I am. See you next time, guys. 7, 48, 49, 50. 50-yard marker. You know, one of the questions I'm asked most often is how far can you accurately shoot a longbow? Well, I'll tell you, shooting a longbow is just like shooting any other bow. It's not the bow, it's the nut behind the release that really makes the shot. What we're going to do today is try to find out just how far I can shoot accurately with a longbow. When you see the target being hit before you ever release the string, then know for a fact, it's not a belief, it's knowing that it's going to hit that spot. That's when you have become the arrow. All right, we got the easy one out of the way. 50 yards. Now we're at 100 yards. We're back now where the big boys play. Oh. This shot is going to put the arch back in archery. People are always asking me why I shoot the longbow. Well, let me tell you, you can get away with a little bit of a mistake from, say, 50 or 80 yards with a longbow. But when you move to 150 yards, you better execute the shot right or you're not going to hit anything, especially an 8-inch balloon at 150 yards. Oh, God. Man, so close. Well, maybe you can hit an 8-inch balloon at 150 yards. I don't know. Who thought of this shot anyway? It's ridiculous to try to hit an 8-inch balloon at 150 yards. Whew. That was a pretty good shot.
As remarkable as his Byron's prowess with the longbow, equally impressive is the fact that he operates a thriving business manufacturing traditional longbows of his own exclusive design. Ferguson Adventure Archery, based in Hartselle, Alabama, has taken a leadership role in the renaissance of traditional archery using the classic longbow that dates back to Welsh designs of the 12th and 13th centuries. Although he's on the road some 26 to 30 weeks out of the year, and on top of that performs a bi-weekly Shot of the Week on ESPN's popular American Shooter Outdoor program, Byron still finds time to make by hand each version of his Safari class signature longbows for a devoted and growing clientele. Byron also finds time to put his extraordinary skill to the ultimate test of the hunt. In addition to black bear, moose, elk, and deer, Byron and his longbow have been known to head out for some wing shooting with a party of shotgun-toting colleagues in search of upland birds. And since the early 90s, Byron has lent his name, time, and expertise to the Ferguson Archery Tournament sponsored by the Alabama Society of Traditional Bowmen. This affair, which draws archers from throughout the South, including celebrities like Allman Brothers guitarist Dickie Betts, raises thousands of dollars each year for Alabama's Children's Hospital. But as a showman, a businessman, and a sportsman, Byron's most enduring accomplishment by far is his perpetuation of the sport of longbow archery in all its forms. In recognition of the great archers who have preceded him and in anticipation of the great archers he hopes will follow, Byron is determined to test the limits of his abilities while extending archery's own possibilities with each and every one of his most amazing shots.